Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we are going to do our 20 tips. Now, this is not necessarily the end of the series because if we're actually, going, say, shore jigging, or there are new parts for this series, we're just gonna add. Okay, and before we proceed, the sponsor of this whole series on shore jigging is Barracuda Fishing Equipment, and I'd really like to thank Barracuda for the support. Barracuda has supported me for a really long time, to tell you honestly. We have a very long working relationship. Dates back like to the new location, or even before that, actually, before the previous location and all. So we helped set the shop up, like literally putting stocks and all that. That was fun. That was fun. And over the years, of course, Barracuda has grown to be the most complete shop here, practically in the Middle East, and has the largest range of JDM and USDM fishing tackle in the Middle East. So we have mostly Japanese, but there are some Western stuff there as well. Okay, they're dealers of Yamaga and Ripple Fisher, some of the best rods available. Studio Ocean Mark calls Barracuda home for the Middle East as well. So 90% of what I use literally can get there. There's just some weird stuff that I use that I buy from my travels and stuff that I make, but majority of what I use is there. Alrighty, so if you're interested, just check them out and send them some love on Instagram, Facebook, and you can get in touch with them on WhatsApp as well. All right, so moving on, here are some shore jigging tips and tricks. These are mostly reminders and also, I would say, housekeeping stuff, just to make your experience better. Okay, now as always, we start with the rod, the reel, line leader, jigs, hardware, and assist hooks. All right, so in that order. Rods. Longer rods give you more reach. So as far as casting distance is concerned, of course, the longer rods will give you more distance. And more importantly, actually, it helps you with avoiding lateral abrasion. And a lot of people don't really notice this until it's too late. Now, what I'm talking about here is when you're fishing from shore and you're casting and there's a drop off, okay? And your line, and here it's sand. Here it's sand, okay? So what it is your line going through the sand, in and out. And what happens is that your line gets abraded, not sideways like that. Okay, so this is your line. It's not sideways like that. It's actually like that. Okay, so it could be this side, or whatever. Sometimes it's actually buried and then it goes through the sand. That's lateral abrasion. And you'll notice this when you're tying your knots and your braid, it just breaks and you don't know why. But that's it. Now, what you need to do is take your line, okay, and then inspect it. Once you see that it looks like it's the fibers are sticking out, kind of like cottoning up, okay, that's lateral abrasion. So what do you do when you're faced with that? Well, you have to cut back on the braid, and well, that's how you deal with it. But see, here's the thing: if you have a longer rod, it actually lifts the line off the sand. A shorter rod, okay, if you have a longer rod, your angle is farther from the ledge, okay, because a longer rod will be able to lift the line away from the ledge or the drop. So if this is the drop right here, a longer rod, see, would be able to angle the line, whereas a shorter rod, boom. Okay, so that's very, very important. um I used to use like, I don't know, 9 foot rods, 8 foot rods, because the shorter the rods are easier to work. You know, the jigs, and it's a bit more responsive and stuff. But as the casting went farther and farther, lateral abrasion actually became a problem, and solving it with the longer rods. And now I kind of not really much of a problem. So take note of that. Okay. Another way to avoid them is to wade. So that's what we used to do. We used to get closer to the ledge so that we can cast out and not really worry about lateral abrasion. Although shore jigging rods that are longer than 10 feet are available, they're hardly called shore jigging rods. They're actually called plugging rods. And although they're called plugging rods, obviously you could use them for shore jigging. And these rods, they're specialized, of course, for plugs. But if you need really long distance casts, the extra foot that they have, as opposed to the standard 10-footer shore jigging rods, they get you there. Okay. Now, third tip. I have three. I've mentioned in the videos, especially the rod videos, that rod technology actually goes really fast. Okay, so as far as say shore jigging is concerned, the rods, they change models quite fast. Oops. And it's kind of hard to keep up, but it is always worth checking the newer models. Okay, so what I do is I upgrade my rods after every 3 to 4 model changes. I often switch the rods after 3 or 4 model changes, okay, if I need to. Now, what this means is that, say you have first version, and then they release a second, third, and then the fourth version. I would look at either the fourth or the fifth version from mine, because majority of the time, what happens is that in the next 2 upgrades that they make, it's mostly cosmetic, but when they change the blank, it matters so much. Especially like for major craft, it was the cross ride. I actually, for me, it was at first it was the what was it, cross stage. Okay, I liked that. It was actually quite decent. And then I upgraded to the sky road, and then from the sky road I upgraded to the cross ride. And I changed from my old cross ride, I switched to the 5G, and boy, the difference between my sky road and cross ride 5G, it's crazy. And very, very worth the money. So for me, at least, I wait until several iterations before I swap the rod. And yeah, it's been working really well since then. Reels, XGs, or extra fast retrieve reels, will help you work jigs and spoons and stick baits better than high or low gears. And especially when you're dealing with shallow water, that's very, very important to take note. Okay. A faster reel pulls jigs and spoons off the bottom faster and keeps you off the snags. And that's something that you really need to consider, especially when you are fishing in shallower water. Now, when you're reeling, the slower reels tend to have like a slower pull, whereas with a faster reel, it just boom. So together with your rod, when you're working it, it helps get you off snags really fast, especially when you need to actually work your lure at a certain water depth. All you have to do is just lift it up, and then a faster reel retrieve, just even with the slower speed, would actually bring it in a bit more consistently and off the bottom. And that really helps, especially when you're fishing in unfamiliar territory. Okay. A huge slack of line is often formed after you cast. Okay. How fast you're able to recover the slack line sets the pace of your fishing. Now, when you cast, there's a huge rainbow of line that's not in contact with the water. Okay. And most of the time, when you're casting towards boils and stuff, as soon as it lands, there's a fish that grabs it. Slower reels will tend to bring in line slower, and sometimes the fish has already spat your jig. So the faster reel lets you recover line faster and gets you fishing faster and gets you into the fish faster. So that's something that you need to look at. So XG is better than HG, and HG is a world of difference between PG. So take note when you're buying your reel, especially when you're shore jigging. And also bigger reels, like take for example, a 4,000 would be faster than a 3,000, even if they're both XGs. So that's something for you to consider again. But that has a lot to do with balancing your tackle. So like take for example, this new major craft I found balances with a 4,000 as well, the new 5G that I've been showing you guys. So this one right here, it balances well with a 4,000. So I'm probably gonna test that out and see in the next excursion. I'm going to be using that with a 4,000. Now with 4,000, XG will reel a heck of a lot faster than a 3,000. So the spool size matters. Okay. Let's talk about line and leader. Okay, the thinner the line, the farther you get, and the deeper you go, faster. Okay, because thinner line obviously will slice through the air when you're casting out. It has less surface area than a thicker line, and more importantly, this is a spinning rod and reel. Remember, and the friction that it causes going off the spool and then also going through the guides matters a lot. So a thicker line will actually hold your cast back more than thinner line. Thinner line, more aerodynamic, and when it hits the water, slices the water, and also it gets you down to the bottom faster. Okay. Always check for lateral abrasion. Next tip, and that's very, very important. You don't know if you have lateral abrasion unless you really check. Sometimes you only find out when you tie knots and stuff. And sometimes, you tie knots and then it breaks. And then you strip some line, you tie knots and then it breaks. And then, you don't know exactly how much of your line has lateral abrasion. So check that regularly, because you don't want to be on a fish when it breaks. That's like where heartaches start. All right. Thicker leaders will give you more hang time. I think I've discussed this in the I think when we spoke about line and leader as well. And it's a good strategy to use for slow jigs. So thicker, longer leaders will give you a parachuting effect and a very big advantage when you're using slow jigs and sliding jigs from shore. All right. Hardware. So swivels on spoons will give you length so that when the the nasty barracuda comes in, it gives you more allowance before your leader. So it saves the catch. All right. Um, they also prevent line twist. So very, very important. Now, here's the thing. Use this type of swivel and this type of swivel. Okay. All right. So let me show you that. Okay, that, but never this type of swivel. This is for bait fishing, and it will break on you. So don't use this. All right. So either use a ball bearing swivel, such as this. All right. Or this. Now here's a tip. You can find these. Okay. So the swivels with extended arms. These are fantastic, man. So I've not seen this in the US though, but you could literally put that there. As you can see, you could tie that on there, and it works really, really well. Okay, so with their spoon and everything, take the split ring off, put that on there with an eye and a barrel wrap, and you have wire protection and also the swivel, and it gives it a really nice action as well. UV reactive assist hooks are good to use in muddy or stained water. Okay, so I think I've discussed this in the assist hook video. So you have stuff like this. If it's clear water, it would scare the shit out of the fish. Okay, but if it's muddy and stained, these are really good because they create hot spots, and they're very, very visible to the fish's vision, and it gives them a place to actually home in when they bite. And man, that works. That really works. All right, now last on hooks and hardware. PTFE coated hooks help you set the hook. You don't need to really set the hook. You just pull back, bang, it's there. Very, very important when you're fishing in shorter distances, because most of the time when the fish bite and then you set the hook, guess what? There's no stretch on the line. And what happens is that you will literally rip the hook off of the fish's mouth, no matter how big the fish is. Okay? It could be that it's setting and then you'll have just a sliver of flesh when you do that, or left. Okay, shake, bang, it's off. So I use PTFE coated hooks or Teflon coated hooks, and it has worked well for me. The downside is it's fucking dangerous, because when you're working with it and you're making your own assist hooks, you could get hooked and not even know that you're already connected to the hook. So scary as hell, but well worth it, and it pays in spades. Now when you're fishing, like take for example that scenario when you're casting out and then the jig is falling and you're still reeling in. Even if your reel is fast, there's still gonna be some time, like a few seconds, that there's slack. And when the fish bites and turns, they're already hooked with PTFE hooks. So that's why I love them and hate them at the same time. All right, now jigs. Wide flat jigs with thin profiles, like these Jig Para Micro flats. All right, will give you the longest hang time, which is something to consider, especially in shallow water. A lot of people, they tie on the big heavy jig before they start out. Now I generally use or start with smaller stuff because heavier jigs obviously get you to the bottom faster. Yeah, there's an advantage with the casting range and everything, but a smaller jig would help you explore. Okay, and it gives you the most hang time, especially something like this. So I mostly start with these. All right, and they help. Other than that, I would start probably with spoons. So it's either spoons or flat jigs, and that's the first thing that I cast. All right, slim jigs are best for deeper water or when the current is ripping. These jigs will often have more action when the current is moving, and they get you down fast if you need that. Okay, not my most favorite, I would say. So I don't really use that. I don't really use slim jigs unless I'm forced to, because most of the time I like being able to have a long hang time. I fish a lot of shallow water, so that's also one thing. But for me, I would always prioritize the jig's inherent motion or inherent action. So when I cast out and it has like its own fluttering, I prioritize that more than I do with the jigging bit. It feels more natural, and fish often, the reaction bite on fish happens when it's fluttering down more than you do when you're jigging it. Okay, here's something big. Spoons. They're often overlooked, but probably one of the lures that can be used for both shallow and deep water fishing. And this is the precursor of shore jigging. And a lot of people have forgotten. All right, so spoons, Castmasters, crocodiles, Swedish pimples, little bit of heft on these jigs. And you can work them deep, you can work them shallow, and all you have to do to work them is reel. It's that simple. So the granddaddy of shore jigs right here, and still as good today as it was in the past. Alrighty, so that is it. Now, before we end this video, I'd like to thank Barracuda for sponsoring this again, and really, thank you very much. Guys, if you haven't yet, subscribe. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up. Share the video to your fishing buddies so you don't have to explain a lot, because sometimes it kind of gets annoying too. I get ya, and I got you. All right, so just send the video and say like, hey, check this out, right? And that's kind of also important for the YouTube algorithm. Comment if I've missed something, okay? Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of experts will chime in, and people who have a really good feedback and experiences for shore jigging, share them in the comment section, so that people would also know how effective this method is. And my God, man, if people start adopting this, in around the world, really, it's the cheapest type of jigging that you could get yourself into, relatively, because it could get expensive too. Alrighty, that's it for this video. Before that, oops, thanks so much to the members, and you can support this channel, of course, through memberships, and you can just click on the membership button somewhere. I think at the bottom of the video there's that. Alrighty, that's it for now. Thanks so much for hanging out. See you in the next one. It would be a new start, so another series. Looking forward to that. See you in the next one. Class dismissed. Oh, look at that. I didn't even know.